In this video, I will show you the incredible power of habits in our lives. But first, I want to start with a story. Lisa Allen was in her 30s and in rough shape. She had ate, drank, and smoked too much since she was 16 years old. Overweight, deeply in debt, with no job for over a year, she was miserable. To top it all off, her husband left her for another woman. Completely fed up with her life, she maxed out her credit card and headed on a trip to Egypt. When she was there, she had a crazy idea. She would come back in 1 year and trek across the desert. She had never done anything like that in her life. She came back home with a new sense of purpose, and she decided she wanted to change everything. But instead of changing everything when she got back all at once, she focused on quitting smoking first. Quitting smoking had rippled into every corner of her life like dominoes. She replaced smoking with running, and then eating better, and then getting a better job, and then saving money. Eventually, she started running half marathons, then full marathons. She pursued a master's, and then even got engaged. In the middle of it all, she went back to Egypt and trekked across the desert to accomplish her goal. She had completely turned around her life in just 1 year. That, my friends, is the power of habit. My name is Katherine and today we're going to be talking about this book, The Power of Habit, Why We Do What We Do in Life and Business by Charles Duhigg. So many of us want to make positive changes in our lives, but we just don't know how. We try and try to change things, but we keep falling back on our old ways. Habits can be changed if you know how they work. That is the core message of this book. Habits are not destiny. As Aristotle said it best, we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence is not an act, but a habit. What we don't realize is that 40% of what we do on a daily basis are habits and not decisions. If we thought about every single decision and made them every single time we had to do something, we would be exhausted by the end of the day. Our brains are constantly looking for shortcuts and how to make things more efficient. As soon as a routine is formed, our brain says, I'm out, you got this, and it could focus on something else. The more you do something, the more it gets ingrained. Think of a forest path. If you use it more and more, the cleaner it gets and the easier it is to use. Now, the unfortunate part is that it is true for both good and bad habits. As soon as a habit becomes ingrained, it becomes harder to change. Think of that forest path. It's always there the more recently you've used it, but the less and less that you use it, well, it becomes more overgrown. This is true for any habit, but the good news is it can be done. So here are 3 important things you should know about habits. Number 1, the habit loop. MIT researchers have figured out that habits can be broken down into 3 steps. The first one is the cue. It's the trigger that tells your brain to go into automatic mode and which habit to use. The second one is the routine, which can be physical, mental, or emotional. The third one is the reward, which helps you figure out whether this one is worth remembering in the future. A perfect example of this is the phone buzzing. That's the cue to run and go grab the phone, which then is the reward of looking at who messaged and also a temporary distraction from whatever else we were doing. If, for example, we need to focus for a time period, well, the best thing is to put the phone on silent. That removes the cue of the phone buzzing and us running towards it. If you are missing the cue, the habit won't happen. Number 2, cravings. Wolfram Schultz was a professor of neuroscience at the University of Cambridge, and he did an interesting experiment. He was trying to find out how we learn, and he found that when we're forming a new habit, we have a spike of brain activity after the cue, routine, reward cycle. Over time, after the habit becomes more and more ingrained in our brains, well then the spike happens after the cue and not after the reward. We begin to anticipate it and start craving the reward before we get it. This is the fourth part of the loop where habits become more ingrained. If we don't get the reward we crave, we become super unsatisfied, angry, or depressed. This is why habits are so powerful. They create neurological cravings, which would honestly explain why my mouth starts drooling whenever I see a donut box, even if I'm not hungry. I start craving that reward of that sweet, sweet donut in my mouth. So it's cue, routine, reward, then craving. Number 3, Keystone Habits. Honestly, these can change everything. The story at the beginning with Lisa is a story about Keystone Habits. They give that domino effect where one change gives you the growth to go to the next change and next change and next change. If Lisa had tried to change everything at once, well, she would definitely have failed. She started with smoking, which gave her growth to tackle the next problem, which was her eating, and then it was her job, and then it was marathons, and then the desert trek gave her that courage and the reward to look forward to when she accomplished her goals. If you focus on Keystone Habits, they will propel you to change a lot of other things in your life. This was true for me in terms of meditation. I had no idea that this would change so many things for me, but when I started meditating, it allowed me to decrease my stress levels, and then I started going to yoga, and then I started eating better. I had no idea that this would have such a big domino effect, but it really, really did for me. Keystone habits are usually those big habits that are hard to change, but once you do one thing, like eating better, will probably propel you to exercise better, and then to change people around your life. Those sort of things are the Keystone Habits that make a big, big difference in our lives. So there you have it. Those are 3 things you really should know about habits. But I gotta say, those are just scratching the surface. There's so much more to know. If you want to know more about habits and how to change them, well then stay tuned. That's exactly what I'm doing. I'm gonna go into why we have them, how we can change them, and have all those positive effects in our lives. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them down in the comments below. And let me know, is there anything you are struggling with in your life or any habits that you would like to change? Thank you so much for watching, and see you next time.